Good morning, All Souls. I'm Reverend Bill Sinkford. Pronouns are he and him. We'll begin with the words of Marta Valentin. We pause this morning from the chaos of the world to reclaim the beauty within these walls, the beauty that carries us through the week. We lift this community onto our shoulders with pride and grace-filled expectations for our children and our children's children. Each week, we light our chalice to kindle the spirit of community. We light our chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. Come now, and let us worship together. I invite you to rise again and join in our first hymn, Wake Now My Senses.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
That was pretty good. My name is Garrett Suarez. I'm your worship associate today. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm from the South, so I will refer to you collectively as y'all. If you're visiting us for the first time or still feel new here, please raise your hand so that we can give you an All Souls welcome. After the service, we will have coffee hour in Pierce Hall. If you're a newcomer, feel free to take a red mug, indicating to others that you might want to chat. Our weekly email bulletin is a great way to find out the latest news. Sign up through the link on the All Souls homepage. Today we honor the great legacy of indigenous and enslaved peoples at this international crossroads now called Washington, D.C. For generations, the indigenous Piscataway tribes have been the traditional caretakers of our bioregion. Over 200 years ago, Euro-American settler colonists founded this church. We have inhabited 3 All Souls church buildings on different sites taken from the indigenous peoples. Each one was built by workers that were immigrants or descendants of enslaved peoples. The heritage of these ancestors is still here, in this region and in our congregation today. In 2024, our All Souls beloved community is learning more about these complex histories. To do this, you might begin by exploring either the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the National Museum of the American Indian. May we learn together wherever we reside as we begin with the past and imagine the future. Now I invite you to greet one another. On Zoom, go to the gallery view and turn your camera on if you're willing and able. In the sanctuary, feel free to get up and move around as you are comfortable. Let's take some time to say hello. All right, everybody. What's that? I know. Thanks very much, everybody. We can continue our conversations after the service. All right. Thank you, All Souls. Thank you, thank you. Feel free to continue conversations after the service. And again, good morning.
I
Friends, it is the ancient and eternal task of the religious community to lift up before us life in its many forms and to pronounce it holy. It is important for us to celebrate life's sacred beauty and radiance. Where does that divine radiance shine through more clearly than in the face of a young child? In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the service of child dedication is a liturgical embodiment of our faith that each of us comes into the world not with original sin, but with an original blessing, a blessing to share with the world. It is a recognition that each of our souls contains the spark of the divine. This service is also a ritual expression of our congregation's commitment to care for these and for all children, to care for the generations to come and for their future.
Good morning. The parents, Neil and Danielle, specifically asked that Bill and I share this act of blessing of Avery. Neil and I forged a bond when he was president of the Board of Trustees.
Tracy, put this down for you just a little bit.
You're much taller than I am.
See if that works. Try it again.
Okay. The parents, Neil and Danielle, specifically asked that Bill and I share this act of blessing of Avery. Neil and I forged a bond when he was president of the Board of Trustees, and that same bond extended to Danielle and now to sweet little Avery. I was introduced to baby Avery through a small square on Zoom, and I've been one of Avery's biggest boosters ever since, and I'm so delighted to take part in this blessing today.
We begin with a question for the parents. Parents, Neil and Danielle, by participating in this ritual today, you seek the blessing of this church and commit yourselves to our faith. Do you also commit yourselves to helping this child discover the source of love at the center of their life? If you do, please respond, we do.
We do.
Tracy?
And now I have a question for all of the grandparents or godparents or guides who are with us today of these children this child who will be blessed. It's a long-standing and loving tradition and task that you commit yourselves to today. Will you do the best of your abilities to promise to help with the love and care of this child and their parents? And if so, please respond, we will, as their guides.
We will. Come forward. What name have you given this child? This happy child. Avery Jean Manzulo Kurtzleben. That's quite a name. Avery, when you get a little older, you may realize that you share a name with a character from Charlotte's Web, which was your mother's favorite childhood book. Avery in that book is the older brother, a bit of a troublemaker. May the trouble that you make always be good trouble. But the meaning of your name comes from Old French, where it meant ruler of the elves or bringer of elf wisdom. It moved into Old English, meaning just counselor. They kind of toned it down a little bit. But I hope your life claims some of that original meaning, some of the magic and some of the wisdom that elves are supposed to possess. And your first middle name, Jean, your mother's middle name, it's a family history moving forward into your life. We welcome you, Avery Jean Manzulo Kurtzleben.
Avery, I bless you with fire. May the spark of the divine within you burn bright and guide your way. But try not to burn one another here.
And Avery, I bless you with life-giving water. May your life unfold like the beauty of this flower. Would you like it? Would you grab it? With your dad? There you go. Let's welcome the newest member of this community. With thanks to all of the helpers who assisted us, please join us as Willow leads responsive reading number 714 in the hymnal on the screen or in the chat.
It is our faith that each child born is one more Redeemer.
By this service of dedication, we commit ourselves to the nurture of this child.
Are you ready to dedicate yourselves to Avery?
We are prepared. We dedicate our minds and hearts to this child and to these parents.
Will you strive to love and cherish them in times of struggle and as well as gladness?
We will love and cherish them always.
We acknowledge that the divine spark within each child.
May we be worthy guardians of this young life. May we build a community in which they will grow old, surrounded by beauty, embraced by love, and cradled in the arms of peace. Amen.
Amen.
Our religious education classes will now exit to your right to go to class.
It was so beautiful to witness that child dedication, and I say, bring on the elf wisdom because the humans are not doing well. Like more, yeah. Congratulations to Avery and family. I'm Reverend Louise, your Minister of Congregational Care, and it's good to be here. The current life and the emerging future of this congregation is woven over time in knowing one another. And that's how we build anew, again and again. It is a truism from one of my worlds that all organizing is reorganizing. And so we reach out a bit beyond the comfort zone to encounter and hear and learn and respond. Maybe exactly when we're not sure we want to. Now, after the service, there is a diverse and interesting group gathering in the dining room, which is out this way and downstairs, or in the elevator downstairs. We are celebrating growing our connections from noon to 2. You can also gather online with Connecting Souls today for a dialogue on this same theme, led by Chris and Diane. You may still join in person today. Lunch is downstairs, not for everybody, but for those folks in the dining room. They will share their lunch if you haven't registered. and 3 experiences of group connection are planned. One of those is going to be a sample covenant group. This is a small group ministry that we are building anew this month and forward, where dialogue begins with check-in and the monthly themes of worship and then expands as the connections deepen. Several new groups are starting. They're going to be meeting twice a month, mostly, from March to June. And to be in a covenant group or to lead one, stay tuned for details. We'll tell you more at the event and in the publicity of next week. Welcoming Wednesday is our regular gathering space for midweek connections, and this week, Rose Eaton is planning an early Lunar New Year party, so check out that tasty description with dumplings in the order of service. The following week, which will be Valentine's Day, is our monthly Vespers evening together in the sanctuary in contemplative song and word with candlelight. If it is not a place you have been yet, we welcome you to Vespers. And as always, look for other ways to learn and grow and connect in our order of worship, the Friday newsletter, and on the website homepage calendar for all the details. I invite you now to take a good seat to settle with some new awareness into our time of meditation. And bring to mind the people and the situations that are on your heart today as we take a few breaths. We'll take a moment now to name any of those aloud. And connecting souls, you may wish to use the chat online. A time for shared prayer. We send healing love to Christina Mercurio, who is currently in chemo treatment. And we surround her with love and light this morning. We send encouragement and care to Adrian Dale in longer-term physical therapy and medical management in a rehab setting. We hold close the families and friends that are now preparing for celebrations of life well lived. For Judy Lever on March 9th, and for Tom Fox, both for the February 17th private service with family, and for the March 23rd service that will be open to all in this space. Now, as we tend our hearts and our shared intentions, may we find solace and strength in the collective cycles of nature, the beginnings and the endings, and how this beloved community gathers and strengthens over time. We bear witness daily to the conflicts and escalations of violence around our countries and this planet. We see the breaking apart of old structures and limiting stories, even lies, that can no longer hold. In a time of truth-telling, we name the full humanity of all peoples in this interdependent web. We feel the many growing pains of building anew, which always come. That which stretches our individual and joint bodies, our weary hearts, and our troubled souls. We lament the areas that repeatedly draw massive pain and suffering. On this morning, we name the Middle East regions with so many of our global neighbors at terrible risk. May we lean in with care to what is precious and raw and real. Let us be agents of healing and peace as our ancestors urge us on, as the future generations we will never know need us to be now, to build anew with vision and humility and love. May we live fully within and through both the grief and the joy in the cycles of life together. And blessed be.
Our reading this morning is from a new book by author Cole Riley entitled Black Liturgies. This is a selection from A Letter to Those with Heads Bowed Too Long. I don't know what dignity is, not cognitively, but I know what dignity feels like. To be loved, to receive honor, to be encountered as a human, not because of any demonstration or performance, but because in mystery, your very being is a miracle, your existence a delicate stitch in the cosmos. Dignity will never depend on anyone's belief in it, certainly not your own. It is inherent. If I never write another word, my dignity cannot be diminished. And yet, the world has a choice, to honor or not to honor. The toll this choice takes has very real implications on our rights, our wealth, our justice, our children, and even on our perceptions of dignity, but never on dignity itself. Dignity is independent of the failure to honor it. The author goes on, she's writing from her sickbed. If my hands can take it, I'm going to wash my hair today. Wash day is my dignity ritual. It requires precisely the same tenderness and patience the world so often withholds from Black women. I let my fingers dance and dip, freeing every tangle. I cradle each tendril like gold as it passes through the brush. What used to feel like a punishment has become an honoring. It is a liturgy of reverence. It reminds me of the inherent beauty of the life lived in this body, with these particular hands, with this particular curl pattern. Wash day asks me to look up and to behold. She concludes, our liturgies begin with dignity, because that is where any kind of liberation begins, with an awareness that you are worthy of so much more than whatever form your chains have taken today. For now, you are here, breathing, being, granting a gift that cannot be replicated, your simple, miraculous, necessary existence. Yes, amen. Wash day is my dignity ritual. Our dignity is where we begin because that is where our liberation begins, with our dignity. Do you have a dignity ritual? Some way to honor the beauty of your particular skin, your speech, your history, your particular life? When you look in the mirror, do you love or critique what you see? Can you remember, can you recover the capacity for gratitude and a love of self that is not narcissistic, but an affirmation of your inherent worth? What is your ritual? Do you savor a cup of a favorite tea in the morning? Walk just a few more minutes with your dog at the end of a long day? Actually, go to the gym. Or offer a prayer of gratitude, which is what I do in the morning. Dignity rituals, there's no particular form that they must follow. But don't we all need reminding, even those of us blessed with great privilege, even those of us who have lived long lives and might wish for smoother skin, more hair, or fewer scars. We all need reminding that it is not about what we have done, but about who we are. Reminding ourselves that we are already blessings before we evaluate what we might have accomplished or not accomplished. That's why in this church we dedicate ourselves to the children, because they are already blessings, and we want them not to forget that as they grow. Every week we sing, Spirit of life, come unto me, come unto this particular package of history and hope that is me, that is you, so that compassion can stir in our spirits. Come unto me, we sing. You can think of that as a dignity ritual we practice every week. There's one other thread I want to pull here. Honoring and experiencing your own dignity does not depend on how you may be viewed by others or by the world. But let me be clear. In this sanctuary, we are committed to change the ways far too many of us are pushed down and held back by the world. You will see the names of all of our ministers on the petition to the DC Council to eliminate the most punitive elements of the proposed Secure DC Omnibus Bill. We need to find better and fairer and more equitable ways to generate safety in these communities. Reverend Rob Keithan, our Minister of Social Justice, is a leader in the interfaith community that is organizing to advocate for those changes. I hope many of you will join us and him. We are clear about our calling to help make the world a fairer place, more welcoming to the human spirit, all of the human spirits in this church called All Souls. But our religious point of view, our deep belief that we strive to practice, our religious point of view is that we, each of us and all of us, can claim our dignity despite the way the world may currently work. And this is not easy, because we all bring the ways of the world with us when we enter here. The harms we've known, we all have those experiences, regardless of race or gender identity or age or ability. We all know what it is to be treated as less than. But I ask you to remember this, to remember that Langston Hughes, who wrote the lyrics of that lovely piece the choir sang as our anthem, I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way. Remember that he wrote those lines at the height of lynchings in this nation, when the original Jim Crow ruled even in the North, as it most certainly did in this city. Our dignity does not depend on how it is honored in the world. Your dignity rituals can, your dignity rituals should remind you that you are worthy of so much more than whatever form your chains have taken today. Liberation begins with claiming our dignity. Building anew is our spiritual theme this month, and that theme suggests a view to the future. Eyes front, let's get it right this time, but let's get going. Let's build anew, begin again in love, let's go. And I hear that urgency to move forward, I do. I feel it here in this community. Let's get going. This long period of transition has been so hard with so many changes and more changes to come. Come on, let's go. But that phrase, building anew, also reminds us that we have built before, that this is not our first rodeo. And that we bring our history, our experiences of success and failure, all the love we have shared and the harms we have done, we bring all of that with us to this task of building anew. Maya Angelou wrote, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again." We need to learn from our past, from what we have tried, from the ways we have succeeded, and from the ways we have fallen short, so that we can begin again in love. And some of the work we have to do going forward is repair work. Poet Amanda Gorman: "Our history is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We do not build anew. We do not begin again with a clean slate. Building anew, well, it needs to start with the past. Begin with the past." My sermon title this morning. It's also the title of the book describing the building of the Museum of African American History and Culture down on the Mall. You've heard earlier that we're encouraging all of us to go and visit that museum, as well as the Museum of Native American History. But how many of you, let me just ask, have already visited the Museum of African American History and Culture? Oh, well, look. And I can't see the folks on Zoom, but I would bet the Connecting Souls have a lot of hands raised as well. How many of you have visited more than once? All right. You'll understand this next piece then. The structure of the museum embodies great wisdom in my judgment. You're asked to go down, literally into the earth, to ground yourself, beginning at the lowest level, 65 feet down, with the oldest truths, before moving up into the hope of the present on the upper floors above ground. We begin with the past. That is the foundation on which we build. And I want to talk a bit about foundations, literal foundations. Some of you know that before answering the call to ministry, I worked in housing and knew at least a bit about construction. Not new construction. I focused on rehab and renovation and repair of old structures mostly. And I saw more than a few foundation failures. Some of you, not many I hope, live in homes where the foundation has failed, where the earth has shifted or water damage has caused the foundation to move and crack, literally to separate, with one section sinking and compromising the integrity of the structure. When that happens, you cannot simply repair the damage that is visible above ground. Oh, you can repair it, but it will just recur again and again. Just building anew above ground won't correct the problem. Now, here at the church, we're dealing with water damage and some damage to our foundations, and I want to assure you that the foundations here have not failed. We're catching this damage in time. But that work is not optional, and you'll all be asked to help this spring in the Hope Rises Capital campaign. But I want to return to the place where I was before. The solution to foundation failure in a home is usually what is called underpinning, where you dig down below the existing foundation, you go deeper, and you literally pour a foundation under the foundation to stabilize the building. I hope I'm not re-traumatizing those of you who have had to pay for work like this. And there are some new ways to do this since I was doing this work years ago, but stay with me in this metaphor. You need to go deeper to find solid ground before you can build anew. The author of our reading writes, "People think liberation is a future unfolding before us, but the path to freedom stretches out in both directions, into both the future and into the past. The path to liberation always involves the past. The question is how we relate to that past. We can try to reject it, try to convince ourselves that we're free of it, just move in the opposite direction. 180 degrees? Yes, that's what we'll do. We'll do exactly the opposite of what we did before. And those who have tried that know that it rarely works quite like that. We can also just repeat the past. In fact, that is, although we wouldn't like to acknowledge it, that is often our default. Even though we know that the harms of the past will simply be brought forward if we do that. So we can reject the past, or repeat it, or we can find ways to use it, to build on the past, to learn from it, to help move us toward liberation. In our personal lives, this often asks us to remember that we are survivors. All of us are survivors, that we have overcome hurts and harms, broken through glass ceilings, and helped others along the way. We're survivors. This personal work is so often to resist the sounds of criticism, including self-criticism, that can drown out our hopes. And in this church, A. Powell Davies was minister at All Souls in the 1940s and 1950s. We remember him for making All Souls one of the few places where integrated groups could gather, for creating an integrated boys' club when the police boys' club, which occupied much of our lower level, refused to integrate. We remember him for making this sanctuary, these pews, a place where Supreme Court justices came to hear a message of justice. We also remember Davies as the minister who planted so many of the UU congregations in nearby Maryland and Northern Virginia. It's an extraordinary history. And we're proud of that. We're proud of what, dare I call it, evangelism? It was called Unitarian Advance back in the day. But to use that history, we need to remember that all of those churches Davies founded were possible because of white flight from the DC of that day, when good, liberal, white Unitarians fled Chocolate City for the suburbs. Cedar Lane Church in Bethesda, the first of those, became the fourth largest church in the denomination, larger than All Souls, as the DC public schools integrated. That too is a part of the story of this church. It's a part of the story that calls us to the work of repair. And I say all this not to belittle or to demean the work of that generation of UUs here at All Souls, not at all. But we need to find solid ground that can hold all of our history, that uses it to fuel our commitment to build on firm, honest foundations. Firm foundations that do not need to present our past as perfect. Begin with the past. Go deep to find solid ground. Build anew. Avoid the harms of the past. It sounds a lot like work. I know, it does. We even talk about our commitment to justice as the work of justice. We need to do the work. You've heard it. Many of you have said it. And it is work, but it need not be grim. In the Old Testament, there's a section when the temple in Jerusalem that was destroyed when the Israelites were exiled, when that temple is being rebuilt when they return. And when the foundations for the new temple are laid, a lot of the people begin shouting for joy. But many of the elders who had known the former temple wept. The prophet Ezra wrote of that time, "No one could distinguish the sound of the shouts of joy from the sounds of weeping." Sorrow and celebration all mixing together. The land of Palestine and Israel has known both for so long. From Cole Riley again. The deepest experiences of joy come in moments when it feels as if something has been restored or renewed. Joy opens us to a spirituality that is capable of feeling all of the truth, a spirituality that can hold more than just our triumphs. Gratitude, she writes, doesn't disguise the harm. It celebrates what the harm hasn't touched. Joy is at once our memory of the bondage that once was and an honoring of the liberation that has come, the liberation that can come. Some of you, I hope, many, are going to join the Growing Our Connections program that Reverend Louise spoke about. There are a variety of ways to connect, to tell your story and hear the stories of others. I think about this as an opportunity to delight, to find joy in one another. It's yet another way to go deep and find liberation in relationships created and sustained here in this church. As All Souls continues its transition and builds anew, grounded in the truth and the hope this community represents, the work can be joyous. The repair can be a pleasure. Building anew can be an expression, an embodiment of the promise we hold here. Because, to use another metaphor from my prior life in construction, All Souls has good bones. This church named All Souls continues to be called to sustain acts of liberation in this location, to keep this a place where we choose each other and choose all of the visitors that continue to join us every Sunday in a hospitality that some like to call radical, but that can become normal, just the way we do things here at All Souls, where you're thriving, your liberation is bound up with my thriving and my liberation, where we choose one another and where together we keep hope rising. Ashe and amen.
I have to admit that I'm a bit of a history nerd. A couple years ago, I decided to explore the history of our faith tradition, this congregation, and even this building. I thought maybe reading a couple Wikipedia articles would satisfy my curiosity. But for every article that I read, I'd open 10 new tabs on my phone, uncovering new people and stories from Transylvanian kings to presidential funerals to civil rights marches, and it goes on. It's easy to picture history as something with little connection to the present, but that's not quite true. While our predecessors gathered by horse and carriage, many of us arrived here today by bus and car. Yet the same 200-year-old church bell tolls. I imagine that 2 centuries ago, someone rang it wearing a black coat and trousers, while today it was rung by some history nerd wearing glasses and a blue sweater. If we are asked to begin with the past, we are equally called to contribute to our future, investing our time, money, and care into the congregation and into this building, which is in need of repair. Accordingly, the ushers will now collect today's offering, half of which will support our church, and the other half will go to the Share the Plate recipient for February. One common unity breaks cycles of violence and builds compassionate, healthy communities through the transformative power of music, the arts, and peace education. Their high-impact, holistic programming engages youth, families, and educators in the DC area to lead a shift towards peace through in-school and after-school programs, mental health services, citywide campaigns, teacher trainings, family engagement sessions, community concerts, and art showcases. They are a previous Beckner Fund grantee, and their current executive director is a member and youth advisor at Cedar Lane UU Congregation. If you're in the sanctuary, the ushers will be passing the plate for our offering. You can also text to All Souls by sending ASCU to 73256. If you're on Zoom, click the link in the chat, which will direct you to All Souls online giving. Thank you in advance for your generosity and for your stewardship that will help keep the history of this congregation alive for future generations.
That song was a song by Haitian composer Sidney Guillaume. It says, let's make a stew together, a most delicious stew, filled with all of these people, all of these rhythms. It's a call for justice. It's a call for being together. We're going to take a pause a moment for our closing song and exhale. Let's just try it all together. Because our closing song after so much joy is just to breathe it in. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. I invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit. Breathe it in.
All Souls is being called, still being called, through all the transitions, through all the ups and downs. All Souls is still being called to live into its name, to become a diverse, spirit-growing, justice-seeking, beloved community. That is the work of this church that we are called to live into that name and to build anew toward a future that points us toward hope. Amen. Amen.